Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. The 2.5 anniversary has officially, quote unquote, begun, and it has brought brand new versions of the primordial demon waifus, Jaune and Blanc. So today we're going to be looking at Jaune, who I consider the better unit primarily because she'll be useful, you know, this meta and other metas. But she is Earth, she is physical. Finally, we get another Earth unit. About damn time. Primal Demon Jaune Spirit, Warrior's Mind. She uses an Earth Greatsword, so if you have EX Earth guy, you just take off his weapon and give it to her, so that's pretty nice. She is a single target Earth alt for 490, no extra damage, and then the EX is 1.5, that's pretty standard. Her first skill lowers all elemental resistance by 100%. So what made the second anniversary Hinata so good is that she gave everyone 50% element attack. Jaune is doing kind of the opposite and doubled because it's, a bigger skill. But she's lowering all resistance to all elements, which is going to help everybody. Literally any unit benefits off this because every unit is an element, and she's going to lower all of those resistances. So that's very good. On top of that, she's also giving everybody 100% weakness strike, which there are units that already do that, right? The old Blanc does that. The Overlord Shizu does that. There are other units that give weakness strike, but the fact that it's coupled with another 100% debuff is awesome. And again, this is a very generic skill. Anybody benefits off this. Any nuker will benefit from having extra weakness strike. So that already is very nice. Her second skill lowers the cost of Vanguard allies' skills by 100. So, how we were afraid that Shizu, second anniversary Shizu lowers it by 20 and it's a one-time only thing. Yeah, well, they said never mind, and they said let's put it on crack. So now it's going to take a skill that is totally capped out on points, because you can only have a skill that counts to 100 points. It doesn't go any higher than that. You will reset it down to its lowest cost, whether it be 0, whether it be 25 or 15. It is back down to its initial cost. And once turn 8 hits, or after turn 8, turn 20, 50, 100, doesn't really matter when you use it, she will give you just an extra 300 skill points, which, actually equals out to 220 because it takes 80 to use it. But you'll have 220 extra skill points. It doesn't go over your cap though, which we'll watch and see during the fight. So if you are 20 points away from the cap and your cap is 400, she's only going to give you the 20 points. But if you're at 0 points and your cap is 400, you're going to have 300 points, right? So it does take into account your current skill cap level increases. You can only use it once per fight, which makes sense. You're resetting every single skill in the front line by 100 and giving us 300 points. So this, I think, is fine. Her Valor trait is terrible. It nerfs greens. It doesn't really matter. Her actual trait is Protection Gauge every 2 turns, which is very, very awesome. You are able to get a free dupe of Blanc from the bingo board, labeled 2.5 ANNI. I'm on page 2. Page 1 is where we got Jaune's. Page 2 is where we get Blanc, so that's very awesome. So if you pull her, you will immediately have access to at least the beginning part of her trait. But I think Jaune is going to be very, very good. I kind of wish she was an AoE Earth alt. That way we had an option, because currently the only EX AoE Earth is Mirren. So not really that great, but hey, we'll take what we can get. We got an Earth unit. Can't really complain about that. But let's go ahead and jump in and test her out. Alright, so we're going to put her on the Primal Demon team, and we're going to go into Inferno 1 Beatdown Battle. We're not going to bring the new Blanc, so we're only going to focus on the power that Jaune is going to bring. Since we're getting the Weakness Strike, we took off Overlord Shizu, we put on Warrior's Mind Violet, being Primal Demon and physical, so we'll get at least some ult resistance down there. So let's see how much damage Jaune does, with her own buffs and the capability of using those skills a bunch of times. And then we'll come back and we'll do some science, and we'll see how much damage we lose or gain by bringing Shizu instead in a different combination. So let's go ahead and jump in. Alright, it's very nice that she does have the turn 2 protection trait, so we can just put either Mirai or Earth Mirren underneath her, and bring her in, and she'll be looking pretty good as far as gauge is concerned. So we'll bring Diablo in. Her job is to buff Diablo, right? She is a support unit. This stage is an AoE stage. Single target alts, I mean, are going to look really nice, but we're going to try and really buff Diablo up as much as possible. And I'm going to come back when we get a good starting hand. Alright, sorry, I meant a good turn 2 hand, but I think you guys knew what I was going for. So, full hand of green right there, awesome. Let's go ahead and use a double stack of violet to help buff Diablo and everybody else in this turn. So, we're going to be maybe struggling to get the EX alt. I don't have the charm on to give extra alt gauge on blues. It's protection gauge right now, so we're going to need, a few more Diablo orbs than what we're getting right now. But Jaune will help us in that moment, right? And even then, in order to increase our damage a little bit, because we have that skill reset in our pocket, it means that we could, in theory, use some big-time buffs early if we have the points, and then come back on the nuke turn, reset them, and then use them back at 80. It's still a large cost, but we have an excess of points normally. And while, yes, this team is meant to have Blanc on it too, and that's going to be where most of our excess points go, because of what we're trying to do, it does open up a few possibilities. So let's take out that Jaune for this misery. Let's continue to use her stacks of pierce resistance, and we'll continue to hit right here. We're going to get binded in next turn, which is why we brought our 2 orb changers up front, plus our alt swapper, because obviously we have an alt for Jaune right now. So we're looking good as far as, turn 4 is concerned. That's a good amount of Diablo orbs right there. That's nice. And we can use both the orb changes and the alt swap ability here, and we'll be looking pretty good. So 1, 2, 3, boom. So now we're up to 15% pierce resistance down. Jaune, isn't doing anything right now, but her value will be at the end of the fight. And, if you want to use the skill early, or some buffs early, like if you wanted to use her weakness strike and resistance down, now, well, not now, but next turn, you could, right? As long as you're keeping in mind that you do need to use another 80-point skill again. It's going to get reset, and you do take that into consideration. So you can help buff your, early turn damage, certainly, but I think she's going to be mainly end of fight, big time buff, and then give these extra skill points to continue to use other skills to stack from other characters, not Diablo. But we can get her out, essentially, because, she's not going to do too much here. But I do want to use her trait on turn 6, so we will keep her in, actually. So alt swap to blue, use Diablo's orb change, and that's all the points we have right now. Alright, we're getting more orbs for Diablo, so that is very good. As long as we can continue that trend, we need like 3 or 4 more in the next couple turns, which I think is doable. We're going to have at least 1 guaranteed. Alright, 43k, looking good. Perfect, that gets us the EX alt right there. So, is there a way to get around this? Not really. Okay, so now we're going to take Jaune out of here. So, she's not going to serve too much of a purpose. We could, nuke with her if we wanted to, but I do want to showcase her more in a support setting, because that's what she's going to be for most of the game. She's a sub DPS here, because she's a Primal Demon, but she's Earth fighting Wind enemies, so she's not going to do as much as Diablo or Blanc, but she is going to still be fairly useful. So we'll take her out of here now. Boom. And then we'll use another alt swap, orb change. So we're up to 35 points left. We have 2 more turns. This will get Diablo's EX alt. So very, very nice. Alright, there we go. And let's just cut into the nuke turn, because nothing else is going to change. Okay, we are back. We're looking... This is a perfect run right here. We have this 1 violet orb, so just green. So, cool, whatever. And... so now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the alt resistance down from the old Warrior's Might and Violet, so 55%. Boom. We'll take her out for old Jaune, and we'll use both of her buffs. So it's got the alt and the EX alt. Boom, boom. And the space resistance down. Now, old Jaune's space resistance down is 50%, but once we use the... Right. Okay, sorry. Thinking to myself. Once we use the new Jaune's buff, that 50% will be overridden. So here, like I was thinking for a second, we ran into a problem, quote unquote, where we don't have enough points, right? We have 2 skills that are 80 points that we want to use here. So 80 and 80. We have 106 left. Plus we want to use the actual skill reset. But that's obviously not enough points. Math is difficult, right? But we're going to use the reset now. That's going to cost 80. It's going to take us down to 26 points. But it's going to give us 300 right here. And it's going to lower the cost of every single skill here back down to its base value. So, boom. So it cost 300 points back up on the board. And now, all the orb changes are back down to 30 and 25. And we have 326 points, which means we can now use the element down. We can use the physical and pierce buff. We could also use Diablo's orb change for that green to give us a full hand. And if this is Jubilee, this is what you're going to be looking for. And then we got 2 stacks of Violet. So we have quite a few buffs going on. And we can use another stack of the Pierce Resistance down from Misery because we have the excess points. We could probably do it a couple times here now. So boom. Alright, 5%. Alright, cool. Another 5%. And then one more time, another 5%. That is the power of getting that 300 points and resetting those skill costs, because we can use those skills multiple times because of Violet, and we can keep on stacking those debuffs. So Diablo now has 170% ult damage, and then on his own self, we have 152% attack, 100% weakness strike, 100% physical attack, guaranteed pierce, and then the enemies have 40% pierce resistance down, 9% defense down from traits, 55% ult resistance down, and then you can see that the 50% space resistance has been overridden because now we have 100%. So, how hard does Diablo hit here? Probably pretty hard. I also want to see how hard Jaune hits, just because she's, the showcase unit. So we're going to send her ult first, and then we'll send Diablo. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's turn the animation on since this is her showcase. So Jaune, her ult looks pretty good. She's psychotic. I think we all knew that. Alright, but being a single target I think does limit her a little bit, because again, we don't have any good AoE EX Earth units. So I think it was kind of a miss on their part. But she does 1.4 million without an EX ult, so that's pretty good. Pretty good. And she's missing that extra 70% Primal Demon EX ult buff from the old Jaune, so we would have done a lot more damage there with her. But Diablo is the AoE nuker here, and we are AoE nuking, and he does how much? 3.4 million damage. I mean, that's pretty good for an AoE when they only have like 1.7 million HP, right? That's pretty good. But is this Jaune powerful enough and worthy enough to be replaced by, say, Overlord Shizu, who, has the same style of buffs, and she takes up the slot of both Jaune, technically, and Warrior's Mind Violet, because she has Weakness Strike and Ult Resistance down, while having that ult swap ability. So we're going to come back now, on the nuke turn, and we're going to compare damage now between 2 different team comps. Okay, we are back on turn 8. We switched up the team. We brought the Overlord Shizu, and then we brought 2nd Anniversary Hinata. So Shizu is doing essentially what Violet and Jaune were doing, together, where Shizu has 50% ult resistance down and 100% weakness strike. So cool, awesome. And then Hinata is giving us that 50% all element attack. So, with this combination, we don't have the skill reset, we don't have those free, 300 points, but we do have relatively equivalent buffs. And, let's see if we match that damage output with this team. And Diablo does 4.4 million, and we had the same amount of stacks. We actually had less pierce resistance because we weren't able to use that skill like 3 more times at the very end. And we did more damage. So, I mean, maybe Jaune isn't as good as I was thinking. Okay. Well, that's certainly some science right there. We need to see in both aspects. Is she good? Is she not? Is she replaceable? I mean, it looks to be. But Jaune, I think, is going to work a lot better with that new Blanc, who's getting those really, really cheap attack buffs. I think that's where her value is going to be. But it doesn't mean that she's garbage. But, let's test her out on a different team now. Alright, next up, we're going to put her on one of the more traditional stacking teams, the Light 3.0. Pierce and stun focused. Millam's got orb change, Leely's got orb change, Raphael's the DPS, Megamine is here for the ult and the orb changing. And then we're going to bring Jaune. She may not be the best option here. It'd probably be better to bring, Light Blanc. But still, it's a stacking team and we can make use of it. So let's test it out. So I think the value from Jaune is going to be eliminating a lot of RNG. Because, sometimes things don't go your way. You don't get the points that you're really looking for. And, your hands may not be the greatest. And so sending 6 blues on a stacking team right before the nuke, you want it to be possible, but sometimes it's just not. And so the fact that she can reset skill costs, therefore lowering your orb change costs to help you get there, or, on turn 8 giving you that 300 points to where you're now able to orb change into a full 6-hand send, that's going to be pretty impactful right there. And what a terrible hand. Okay, so I'll come back. Hold on. All right, got a better hand now, so we can do this. But continuing my train of thought from earlier, is that maybe Jaune isn't going to be the savior of blue stacking teams like I thought she was going to be on paper, because based on the testing from the last segment, she is fairly replaceable, and you can get a lot more damage out of it than one would think you'd be getting from a 100% weakness strike and 100% resistance down. She may fall into that same category as what Konosuba Kazuma was, where, the 50 up and the 50 down for attack and defense, it looked really good. But then in practice, it maybe didn't quite add up to what you were hoping for. And, that may be where this Jaune ends up. She still is going to have a lot of usage, don't get me wrong. And, for newer players that aren't trying to, sweat their way through everything, I think she's going to be a fairly strong pickup for most of them that, again, are not trying to be rank 10 or higher in Jubilee, and they just need a second solid support option. I think she's going to be able to give that in spades. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with her being generically useful, maybe a bit underpowered for the 2.5 ANNI, at least being labeled the 2.5 ANNI, but it is something. Okay, we kind of got screwed here, didn't we? So yeah, here's something where we brought Millam in. We probably shouldn't have, but I can't orb change the full hand because I only have Megamine who's handling oranges. So we'll bring her in and we'll do this and we'll be on our merry way. And this won't be a perfect run by any means, but we can still probably make it work. And yeah, maybe not a 10 out of 10. Maybe in 8 out of 10. Still very useful, still very powerful, not exactly necessary for every single thing that you need to do in the game. But she will eliminate a lot of that RNG that's going to come in. So let's take Raphael out. Let's bring you in. Let's bring you in for Megamine. Perfect. Now we can get that full hand of blues. So there are ways to play around. And again, a 200% buff, is what it equates to, is not an insignificant amount. What, the 3 million we did? It kills anything in the game. Literally, there's no boss that has 3 million HP. There are ones who are close, certainly, but no one is going to have that level of raw power that is going to survive that, unless it's Jubilee, where, it's ranking and it doesn't really matter all that much. But there are options. There are definitely solid options for you to do. So let's do this orb change. Cool. Let's bring Raphael in for Millam. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what the rest of the player base feels after getting to play around with this Jaune. And see if they agree with me, or if they think that she's overrated, or if she is really, as good as we wanted her to be. It's going to be pretty, I think, divisive on people's thoughts. Because I know Blanc, she's going to be pretty heavily relegated to one team, and that's it. And it's not the greatest way to play, but it is an option. And if you give her enough buffs, she will also kill everything in the game too. And, Jaune will help you get those buffs and get those stacks with her skills. Even on a team that doesn't have a skill reset, or a way to use multiple skills a turn, we're still going to be able to do something with it. So, let's orb change here. And let's bring you in for... Actually... Let's do this. Right? No, let's not do that. Let's bring you in for Jaune. Okay. That works. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll get that stack in. And then we've used Megamine already, so here we go. Let's do this stack. We're 215 points. We'll get a lot of it back here. We'll have plenty to nuke, obviously, because we are not running a whole butt ton of 80-point skills. Like, not every skill here is an 80-pointer. And we're going to have that back pocket 300 points. So, okay. Let's go ahead and get this set then. So we'll use the light buff. Boom. Awesome. Now let's get Milliman here for Lumi, because we've already used it. We'll use her attack buff. We'll use the ult buff for Megamine. And then, okay, so here we go. Here's an example of, not technically having the points that you're really, really looking for. So we have 147. I need to use both of these skills right here, but I also want to use the debuff. Well, let's go ahead and give us those extra 300 points now that it's turn 8. Boom, 367, and now we have enough to use everything and really make sure that this team nukes properly. So there is viability for her. Maybe not tippity-top, oh my god, damaged viability, but definitely the viability to erase some RNG. So Raphael, he's going to probably kill 2.1 million. Still good for a team that's over a year old now. So there we go. We'll make sure to take her into some other fights. We got like the Primal Demon Chamber of Memories video that I'm going to do. There are a number of stacking teams that she can work on. Visions of Coleus obviously going to be one of those. So I think she's a solid option. I think she could be a little bit more powered up, but I think she's solid. Not quite as good as I wanted her to be, though, so I think her ranking for me did fall a little bit during this video. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's it for me. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.